Stand by SOT1.
Standing.
10 seconds. Ready, rolling. Ready, SOT1.
Ready.
In 4, 3, 2, 1. Roll in.
From legendary Uncle Studios in beautiful Southern California, welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters, the central location for you employees, you employers, and of course, we haven't forgotten about you damn independent contractors. And now, here's this week's edition of Work Comp Matters.
You know, in times of turmoil, in times of disorganization, when things, I don't want to say necessarily fall apart, but when spur of the moment decisions have to be made, someone's true character comes out, and you see the loyalty, the dedication, and what people are really made of. That's why, one of the main reasons why I enjoy doing the Work Comp Matters in the form of a live radio podcast. Things will happen. There will be traffic. People have their own personal issues. I'm not paying my peeps a hell of a lot of money. In fact, some of them don't get paid at all. They do it because they love it. They do it for the exposure. They do it because you treat me right, I'll treat you right, etc. And also, it helps keep our cost basis down, and certainly prevents hours and hours and hours of editing, which is one of the reasons why we do the show the way we do the show. For those of you listening that may have seen, I posted a few minutes ago that we were going to have to record the show live and put it on a half hour late. We were able to start the show just 5 minutes late. Of course, a choice had to be made for the spur of the moment. So we changed our minds like, 2 or 3 times before, but we always try and put it on live for you whenever possible. So I once again, as I've done before, want to thank the fabulous team around me. Scott Walton of legendary Uncle Studio, John Scalia out in Munich, Germany, guy, who helps me with information technology and getting the stuff into the cloud whenever he can. Of course, mancavepodcasting.com, my wonderful partner, Monica Rossman. We also have my brother, Jeff Appel, who does Live Well. We have Brian Ferber, the Pitbull, conservative Republican, new member of the team. By the way, both of them are going to be off next week. And of course, we have Ginger Shades and Julie Champagne of the Ginger Shades Experience, a soiree. So there you go. Good afternoon, everybody. It's July 2nd, about 12:09 in the afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters. We are brought to you by the workcompcentral.com. If you want the #1 location for workers' compensation in both California and around the United States, check out the workcompcentral.com. They've got a free 7-day offer. And if you want to pick up their services, I have them. You should too, damn it. It's only $1 a day. Work Comp Matters is also brought to you by turchinlaw.com, 818-230-3110. If you need any workers' compensation, employment, or labor law advice. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Steve Appel. Of course, the #1 story is for everybody to have a very safe 4th of July. Don't burn anything down. Hydrate yourself. 4th of July is this Sunday. The federal holiday of Independence Day is being celebrated on Monday, so everybody is closed. And we've got that out of the way. For the next 20 minutes or so, and I don't know if we'll do a break, we'll see. John and I are going to talk about, of course, the number one story in the nation and one of the main stories in the world is the Florida condominium and what the current status is. We've been hearing in the news that they have confirmed now that about 20 are dead, 129 are missing. Speculation as well as facts still revolve around what caused this. This clearly now seems to be a building error where people were paid off, shortcuts were made, under the table payola was made. I don't say that because of rumor. This is a documented fact, and John and I are going to do the main story on this, and then both of us will have comment. And John, I'll go ahead and start off with the paragraph or two. Nathan Reiber, who died in 2014 at the age of 86, was born in Poland and raised in Montreal, Canada. After earning his law degree, yeah, the dude was a lawyer, believe it or not. He spent the bulk of his career in Toronto before moving to Florida in the early 1980s. As recent U.S. media reports have noted, Mr. Reiber faced significant legal and ethical troubles around the time of his move, including allegations of tax evasion related to previous business ventures. In 1984, he was allowed to resign from the Law Society of Upper Canada after failing to cooperate with an investigation into income tax charges against him. Yeah, he was basically disbarred. John.
Those battles continued well into his time in Florida. In 1999, he won a Canadian tax court appeal involving a 1974 assessment related to his involvement in the buying and selling of luxury boats, despite the judge in the appeals case calling the manner of the transaction, quote, professionally and ethically bereft. In parentheses, it says deprived of or lacking. It assumes we can't understand English, I guess. But with the Champlain Towers as a springboard, along with other new developments and apartment to condominium conversions, Mr. Reiber also successfully established himself as a Miami area business community leader and philanthropist. In a glowing Miami Herald obituary after his death, Mr. Reiber was described as a family man with a sharp business sense who never lost touch with his immigrant roots.
Yeah, imagine that. All you have to do is pay off your development companies, your city councilmen, just pay off everybody in politics to get things done the way you want them done, and you are a philanthropist. I will continue on. It described his role as a board member or benefactor for an array of charities, including those focused on healthcare and the arts, and noted that he addressed NATO while serving as executive vice president of the Jewish Institute of National Security Affairs. Mr. Reiber was not the only Canadian who was involved in the Champlain Towers development. Another now deceased Toronto businessman, Nathan Goldlist, was listed as president of the complex's management group during its early days. John.
Details of the Canadians' respective roles are now difficult to discern. Attempts to reach surviving family members of Mr. Reiber and Mr. Goldlist on Sunday were unsuccessful. However, it appears that the Canadian developers' involvement in Champlain Towers, as well as their undertaking of new projects in Florida, ended many years ago. A corporate listing shows that Mr. Reiber's construction company, Natel Construction, Inc., was dissolved in 1999.
According to Donna DiMaggio Berger, a lawyer representing the Condo Association on the original declaration of condominiums, two development companies are listed, Sanat Investment, Inc. and Can Fla Developments, Inc. John Pistorino, a prominent structural engineer in Miami who wrote the region's 40-year recertification program, said he had been retained to investigate the cause of the collapse. John.
Mr. Pistorino designed the recertification process as a young engineer, following the collapse of a federal building in downtown Miami in 1974. which left 7 people dead. The concrete was compromised because the steel was corroding inside of it. No one fixed it or took care of it. It was a little over 30 years old, he said. A key pillar of the redecertification program was that a building needs to be constantly maintained. Miami has an aggressive climate, he said.
The air is full of salt from the ocean, and that salt attacks concrete. Mr. Pistorino estimates it may take 3 months to determine the cause of the collapse. He and his team will be looking at any available documentation that's still available, such as drawings and permit applications, correspondence with residents. There have been complaints from owners in the past about water as well as evidence from the site. Before John continues, I want to say that I have heard stories that because in Florida, there is basically chance of rain 100% a day. Now, it may only rain for 5-10 minutes real light, or it might rain heavy. But when it rains in Florida, from what I hear, the underground parking constantly got flooded like 1 to 2 feet. John.
From what he's seen so far, Mr. Pistorino noted that there seems to have been, quote, a lot of delayed maintenance of the building, which should never happen, close quote. Questions have been raised about why the condo association waited so long to act on the consultant's report. But Ms. Berger said that characterization is unfair. Ms. Berger said it took time to secure a $12 million line of credit to complete the repairs, as well as find a contractor, plus COVID-19 caused delays. Moreover, she said there was nothing in the report that warned of imminent danger. Steve.
Yes, sir. I lost track of, here we go. Got it. In November 2018, a town official reviewed the document and concluded that the building was in, quote, very good condition, close quote. Wonder how much money that person got paid off, she said. One telling detail, she said, is that the board members continued to live in the building. Would any rational people who read a report and thought it was a hazard continue to live there with their children? It's not logical, she said. And by the way, the vice president and her 2 adult sons and their families are missing right now. That's the end of this horrific story. There's no question in my mind, in my opinion, that clearly there were payoffs behind closed doors. In my opinion, people were bribed, and regular maintenance, appropriate maintenance, which should have been performed, was not performed. And John will tell you, because John's been doing this show with me for a couple of years. Very rarely do I go out on a stretch when I don't have documented proof and say, in my opinion, people were bribed, there were payoffs, and illegal shenanigans were performed. John.
Yeah, my friend the guy who's been my longest friend from America for over 50 years now, the guy who was Governor Brown's right-hand man. Anyway, one of his friends is a civil engineer on a faculty in Florida. And that guy said that during the 1980s, lots of beach sand was used to make the concrete, which is illegal. Beach sand is not appropriate for concrete for obvious reasons, namely all the climatic conditions you just talked about. The beach sand would corrode quickly, it would corrode the rebar. And he said during the time that this was built, a lot of that was going on. And since we know that the people who were involved in running the construction company or the construction of it were slime balls, it's not surprising that they would do that. In fact, worldwide, there's a black market actually in sand because it's in such demand for building. So that appears to be part of the problem. And as to the woman's statement that why would anybody live in the thing, let me remind you of something. You and I both appeared in the old state building. I assume you did, right, Steve? Didn't you appear in the old?
Yes, sir. Sir, go ahead.
And it was condemned. You remember that?
What I remember is that it was filled with asbestos. If I'm not certain, I think it was built like in the 1930s when a lot of downtown buildings were there. They knew it had, and if I may really quickly, and John, you can correct me if I'm wrong. when you originally build with asbestos, that is not a problem. The problem is that when the asbestos moves, when the asbestos by a building when the asbestos gets broken into, those particles go out into the air. They get in the air and heating system, and then it gets filtered throughout the building, and that's when you get your asbestosis. Go ahead, John.
Okay. Well, aside from the engineering aspects of it, the reality is the building was condemned for that reason. Flat out, it was condemned. It was a health hazard. And I don't know if you remember, but the SEIU, the State Employees Union, negotiated a contract with the state, which paid their people hazard pay to continue working in a building that was certified as a health hazard. So when this imbecile from the Homeowners Association says, why would anyone live in a building that's unsafe? Well, bimbo, the answer is that people do things out of economic necessity. So the state of California Workers Union actually negotiated a premium rate for people to go work in asbestos. Isn't that wonderful? So the point is, that's an idiotic quote from an idiotic woman. That's why people live there, because they don't have an alternative. Yeah. So that's clear. And it's obvious that, I wrote a piece the other day on my Facebook page, in which I said that this incident represented the intersection of two things. It represented the intersection of what we call Occam's razor. Occam's razor is a philosophical principle that says the simplest explanation is usually the correct one. So a building falls down, duh. The other intersection is a principle in law that says res ipsa loquitur. That's Latin for the thing speaks for itself, meaning when something happens that's so obvious negligence must be involved, why bother to go to a trial? Anybody can see it. Well, a building collapses and falls down. You think that something got screwed up somewhere? Duh. I mean, it's obvious. And so, all this cover up about, well, we're going to take months, and the building was just fine, and we're trying to figure out what the cause is. Really? I mean, it's unbelievable. It's just, it already reeks of a cover up by the fact that no one comes out and says, clear, somebody screwed up.
John, I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish. Go ahead.
That's it.
As I was speaking a couple of minutes ago about the water flooding constantly the underground parking. Apparently, an engineer warned parties October 2018 that he had discovered, quote, major structural damage, close quote, to a concrete slab below the pool deck in the section of the Champlain Towers South condominium building that collapsed. In fact, what I understand, the swimming pool was one of the first things to go. And if it indeed went, I'm sure everything went just after that. The engineer, Frank Morabito, said in a structural survey report that waterproofing below the pool deck and the entrance drive had failed, allowing damaging leaks. Failure to replace the waterproofing in the near future will cause the extent of the concrete deterioration to expand exponentially, Morabito wrote. He said a major error had been made in the construction of the building when waterproofing was laid on a flat slab rather than on the sloped surface to allow the water to run off. Again, this was a report that was filed back almost 3 years ago. John.
Yeah, I have a question for you because, I live in Munich in what you in the States would call a condominium, but I've fortunately never had to put up with a homeowners association. The way it works here is every month I pay, actually it's pretty hefty, I pay 400 euros a month to an insurance company. Okay?
Which is how much in US dollars, John?
Well, nowadays that would be getting
500, 550?
Yeah, inching towards 500, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
But when something goes wrong, I don't have to worry about having an assessment. For example, the pipe under my main floor, where my living quarters are, the upstairs of my apartment, about a year and a half ago, it sprung a leak, and it was a leak underneath the floor. And so they actually sent out, it was actually sort of funny. It was a parade of people to ascertain what was wrong. Finally, they concluded that they had to rip up my floor and they had to replace the pipe. Okay. And then after they did that, they put the floor back and they refinished the floor. It didn't cost me a dime. I mean, it was all paid for by the insurance that I pay every month. So, I don't understand why you pay a homeowner's fee, and then on top of that, they assess you for improvements to the building, which clearly aren't your fault. I don't get it, but maybe you can explain that American mystery to me.
John, all I can suggest is COLA. The cost of living goes up on the average of 3% a year, and so they have to raise those assessments. I don't live in a condominium or townhome complex. I live in a single family residence. Therefore, I don't pay homeowner fees. But what I do know is that there is a homeowners board. It is run by the people that live in the complex, and they vote on what needs to be done and if raises need to be made, if there's not enough money in the reserve. But yes, go ahead.
I understand why it does, if you had a sensible system like we do here, you would simply pay a set rate every month, and whatever went wrong, the insurance company would fix it. I mean, I don't get this. Well, you pay an indeterminate amount, and when things really get bad, we're really going to sock you. Oh yeah, sign me up for that deal. Really.
John, we've got about 2 minutes left. Go ahead and speak for another minute or two, and then I will close out our show.
Okay. Well, you remember when this first happened, and my immediate comments were two things were at play here: faulty construction and corruption. And you reacted, no offense, but in a typically American way, which was like, corruption in America? What? Faulty construction in America? No, maybe it's terror. No.
No, John, I didn't say corruption in America. What are you talking about? I said I wasn't aware that there was corruption when the thing was built, but I firmly believed in a lack of appropriate maintenance over the 40 years. That's what I meant.
Yeah, well, that's for sure, but it was more than that. I mean, 40 years isn't old enough for a building to fall down, even if you don't maintain it very well. I mean, if something is built well, it shouldn't collapse in 40 years. The house I grew up in is almost 100 years old now, and it hasn't fallen down yet. Okay, and the house is on the San Francisco city limit line. My grandfather had it built, and it went through the earthquake in '89, and yes, it had some structural damage that needed to be repaired, obviously, but it didn't fall down. I mean, when you build something right, it doesn't fall down. That's the res ipsa loquitur.
Absolutely. And for the record, I believe that our wonderful country, the greatest country in the world, the United States of America, was built on corruption, survived on corruption, and will continue to survive on corruption, because there is no way that our peeps, our House of Representatives, our U.S. senators, our city councilmen, all forms of state and local government are surviving on their minuscule pay. We'll all call it minuscule pay, $100,000 or $200,000 a year, and they're managing billions and billions of dollars. And to not have some pork there that in some way is going to filter out to people that are corrupt. That's the way our society is. So, John, if I gave you the wrong impression that I was surprised and shocked about corruption, no, I'm not. I just wasn't aware that it was involved in the building of this. But thank you very much for pointing that out. I also want to thank you all for listening to our July 2nd Work Comp Matters show, and glad to be able to put that on for you live on behalf of John, Scott Walden of Legendary Uncle Studio, those at Turch and Law, as well as WorkCompCentral. We wish you a very safe, a happy 4th of July weekend. Stay hydrated. Please don't cause any fires. Be safe and sane. We are off Monday, and we will see you again live at 12 noon Friday for another edition of Work Comp Matters. Bye, everybody.